Heavenly Father, thank you so much for this time together. God, I thank you for these leaders. I thank you for your calling on their lives. I thank you for the incredible work that they're doing. God, I pray that as we just spend a little bit of time together today, that you would meet each and every one of us right where we are, speak to us individually, and challenge us and encourage us. And I pray that when we're done here, we'll have a couple action steps to take that will help us be even more effective in the ministry that you've called us to. God, thank you for Vangie and her ministry and her availability today. And just speak through her in a special way. And we commit this time to you. In Jesus' name, amen.
Thank you so much, Jonathan. So great to be with you all today. Greetings from the Pacific Northwest. I am in Washington State, just across the border from Portland, Oregon, where it is nice and chilly and expected to increase about 30 degrees today. So we're in a weird fall pattern, but it's wonderful to be with you. I'm a consultant with the Focus Group. We're based out of St. Augustine Beach, Florida. But we have a consulting team across the US, and we serve about 99% of our clients are Christian nonprofits and organizations. We serve through different avenues here. So Targeted Advancement Council, really focusing in on areas of need. Strategic planning, we have a process called Discern, which results in a 3-year rolling strategic plan, which we all know how valuable those are. Feasibility studies and capital campaigns. So really walking alongside organizations through programmatic or building campaigns through 18 to 24 months, or maybe even a little longer in those capital campaigns. Research and foundations. We have a team that dives deep into wealth screenings, understanding who your givers are and making sure that you're focusing on those individuals. And then we have training and tools for new development staff, all the way from creating a major donor training or major donor program, all the way to what is planned in estate giving. What is this thing called legacy? So we're kind of a catch-all for this, but with the emphasis on major donor fundraising programs and the tools that you need to be successful to set you up for those asks. And so really excited today to talk to you about case for support, or case statements, or case, depending on what you call it. Typically, what I was used to before coming to the focus group was just a 1 to 2 pager, a document that kind of gave that high level information of where we're headed. But a case for support really is a presentation tool that you then get to utilize in each of your major donor interactions, and it sets you up for success within that cultivation timeline. And what we're finding now, a lot of major donors want something tangible. They want to see it, they want to feel it, and this really helps you then know, how do I report impact? If I've outlined it in the case statement, I'm going to need to show that through my stewardship report and my impact report. So it really does help to guide that process. The strategic plan really sets up the case statement. And I know you've got a session coming up, I think, on strategic planning, and you've been working on that. But we are big fans of strategic plans that are nimble and agile and don't sit on a shelf. I think we all learned that in COVID. We all had to pivot. And if you had a nimble strategic plan, you pivoted well. If you didn't, you got a little stuck as to how to move forward. But the strategic plan really does help to guide the content, especially the vision for the future section in the case that we're going to talk through. So we're affirming our mission and vision through this planning process. I just worked with an organization that has been around for 40 years and has never had a strategic plan. And through this process, they affirmed their vision, rewrote their mission, and then established core values. For them, that was incredibly valuable. But then out of that, they also had a focus where they could walk out of those meetings and say, this is exactly what we're going to do. over the next 3 years. And now they're in a cycle of revisiting that every year. It validates our outcomes, where we're headed, what our plans are. It creates buy-in by the key constituents that are around you. So you're engaging people in this process, you're giving them ownership, and you're hearing their feedback and where they want to see the ministry go, which just strengthens that relationship with them. You're demonstrating your organizational competence. This is one that, with those annual performance metrics and with those goals and those targeted pieces that you're focusing in on, this shows a donor that you have the plan moving forward and you're not just winging it. You've really got a path and how you plan to get there. You re-examine your strategic assumptions. Who are you? What is your mission? What are you called to? Where are you going? This really affirms all of that as your strategy begins to roll out into your annual plan. And then it signals leadership effectiveness. So through those annual performance metrics, you have people who are assigned on your staff to take this plan forward. And so this has those tangible metrics, but it also has those milestone metrics that you have moving forward. We just completed our strategic plan as our firm, and it was a very defining point for us. And I have my own set of annual performance metrics and my timelines that I'm holding myself and my team accountable to, as does the rest of our firm. So it really is an opportunity to bring everyone together to make sure that we're all moving forward. And as a result of that, you can then lean into your case. So what is a case? I've got several just samples here. They're just presentation tools that articulates your mission and helps you fulfill that mission by saying, we are going to do this, this, and this, right? It's showing a required budget. What do we need to meet this vision? It's showing the strategy of how we plan to get there, those specific initiatives that are laid out to raise that fundraising. And then it's going to give our donors those deliverables and those measurable outcomes that a year from now, they can come back and say, I see how you did all of those things. I see the impact of my giving and how I was able to resource the organization to meet the mission. It is not a mass marketing tool. It is very much a tool that you will use one-on-one, one-on-two, in small groups as a presentation tool with prospective donors. And there's very much this understanding around the case statement that there is an agenda around fundraising here. We want to ask permission in advance so that they understand that we are going to show them our plan for the year. And we're inviting permission and from them to let us do that because it will result in an ask. Your donors will start to get in a rhythm and know that when you say, I'd like to come present the case, that triggers them to know it's time for an ask, I'm prepared. And it doesn't feel icky. It's an awareness that this is a step in the process and that they will be fully equipped to be able to make a decision around a gift. And who's it for? Major donors. Your major donors might be different than the organization next to you on the Zoom screen. And so that's a number that you set to establish who are those people that you have a primary caller assigned to, that you are walking alongside in relationship with to cultivate an ask through a personal ask and not just an appeal in the mail or a social media post or an email. So these are people that you have very intentionally built a relationship with and are walking alongside with. So we're going to walk through the 10 elements of what we would call a case that sticks, that makes sure that it is something that your prospective donors that you have shared with are going to walk away from their time with you and hopefully tell others. So there's ways that we can bring new information to the front of their minds so that they can go and share your mission with others. And hopefully that just brings more into your fold. So we're going to walk through these At the end of each one, we'll just take a quick pause, and if there's any questions related to one of the elements, we can dive in deep. I've got some samples that we're going to look at as kind of how did some organizations put this into real tangible presentation tools. So the first one we'll dive into here is the theme. The theme is often the hardest part of the case to decide on. It is one that you will live with. Potentially with an annual fund case, you'll live with this theme for 2 to 3 years. If you're in a capital campaign, you're going to live with it forever because people will reference back to that campaign theme that has gone through not only the years of the campaign, but remember when we did that in the Raising Hope campaign. It's referred back to. It's appearing as a single thread throughout the case statement. So not only is it on the cover, but hopefully it's woven through the subheadings, through the design, and then ultimately through your vision for the future. And it should express in a creative way kind of the communications objective of your case statement. It's really great to wrap your annual plan around this so that all of your communications have the same theme building up to that case for support presentation. So it's not going to be the first time that a prospective donor sees or hears the theme. Hopefully they've heard it and seen it before. So I'd like to introduce you to an organization called JAPA. They are a ministry in the Iowa area, Des Moines, where they ministered to homeless. They provide jobs, helping people get off the street. They have cottages for housing that they've done in a kind of tiny house village, food, but they're really coming alongside people and giving them a helping hand up and out. So their theme for their annual fund case was strengthening foundations. So you can see it's present here on their cover. And then on the right side here, we've got how they wove that theme throughout their document in their subheadings. So broken foundations, rooted in love, laying the groundwork, restoring a foundation, stories of strength. Each one of these speaks back to the strengthening foundations theme. And then you can see as they get into the cost of providing hope, we have funding our foundation. And so it's just a woven thread throughout the document. The second organization we're going to look at today is Centered. They are an organization in the Seattle, Washington area, and they raise up the next generation of Jesus-centered leaders through programs and engagement of not only younger professionals who are coming up into the world, but also civic-minded individuals and professionals. And they have a key emphasis on bringing the generations together for collaborative conversations to learn and grow from one another. So we're going to look at JAPA, which is very tangible. They have items that with the housing and the food and the jobs that they can put metrics to, and then Centered, which is programmatic and had a little bit of a harder time nailing down who they were. But through this case process, they are firm in their understanding of what their mission and their calling is. So their theme here is strengthening our roots. You can see here they went with an artistic drawing of a tree, and that tree comes to life through a visual representation throughout their case. But they've got made to thrive, developing rooted leaders who thrive, deepening our roots, a strongly rooted future, nourishing the soil, different things that kind of go back to that theme to carry throughout the case. Any questions on theme? It's one that it is you throw words. What do you think of when you think of your nonprofit and the ministry and the work that you're doing? You throw words on a paper and you start to live in that and kind of craft it. And it's definitely an engagement opportunity for the team to come alongside and really say, how can we speak to our vision, but also speak to our communications throughout the year through this theme. Theme should be connected to a specific project. Great question. If you are leaning into an initiative, then yes, I would say so, but most often not in your annual fund case statement, you're going to have operations and maybe 2 or 3 additional initiatives. But there's always a great opportunity. I have one client, they are working to build some soccer fields. And so we're saying a pitch for play, right? So we reference the soccer fields, but we also know the importance of physical activity and play in the lives of youth. So it's a combo. They have some initiatives that they'll be carrying out, but they also have their general operating budget as well they're covering. Yeah. Well, as we move into the need, this is often the section that we all think, what is the need we're addressing, right? That's where we come from our ministries. But what I want you to encourage you to think about is it's not kind of the financial needs, not what you need, but it's the problem that your organization is addressing from a high level. So for instance, if you are JAPA and the homeless ministry, you're going to look at homelessness across the board, not just in Des Moines, but what is this crisis that the US and the world is facing around homelessness? And then you're going to bring it down to what are we facing here in our community, or what is that need that we're meeting? So thinking high level and then bringing it down. Using a combination of statistics and anecdotal information. This is very helpful for people to have reference points. So you'll see Barna a lot in these. You'll see good soil reports if you're a school. You'll see different statistics that come out from the World Health Organization. We want to give people an opportunity to go and investigate more, right? We're piquing their interest in some regards if they're a new potential giver to learn more about the need that we're meeting. And we don't want to overstate it. We don't want to go too deep into it. This is just more of that high level piece. I did one case and it came back in a feasibility study as it was just depressing. It was just dark and too much. And so we really want to think through, we're going to walk this donor through the process of learning about the need and going into how are we meeting the need and an encouragement. And so we want to just give them a perspective and an understanding, but really think high level. This is another place where I like to say, okay, what is the one statistic that I learned about this issue that we're meeting that I will go tell my friends? Kind of what is that sexy statistic that you might walk away with and people will say, I had no idea. Tell me more. That's where we want to end up with the needs section. So you can see here with JAPA, they talked through the broken foundations. This is their page here. They have 650 people are homeless each day in Polk County. 1 in 3 individuals are homeless in the Des Moines metro area, are first-time homeless, and 30% of our nation's homeless population are families with children. That helps me have a better understanding of not only this is a crisis that we're facing in the world, but when we get down deep, specific for Des Moines, I have a better understanding of, I see 650 people. I'm not going to see them each day on the street. So where are they? And JAPA's giving them a place to be. Centered was a little bit harder of one for them to find some kind of general needs around leadership. And so we really dived into what is loneliness like? What are our leaders facing when they're kind of in their own world and they have no one to lean on? They don't have a community to come alongside them. So you can see here, most of those who do find themselves in a position of leadership are lonely. 50% of CEOs express feelings of loneliness, and 61% believe loneliness hinders their job performance. Only 34% feel they're called to the work they do. Another 34% admit that they've never really thought about struggling with their identity. So they really dove into more of those conversations. You can see down here, they referenced Harvard Business Review and Barna for their statistics. So it's really leaning into the data that's out there and pulling it in here. So high level, and then going into more of a unique kind of look at your area specifically, or thinking through what's the need we're meeting and how do I transition well from that statistic to the need that we're meeting. We're setting them up to understand why we exist. Any questions around the need?
Vangie, it's Jonathan. I was just going to say, yeah, so the flow is really bigger, broader. What's the issue, the cause that's really that you're speaking into, and what's going on with those challenges, and then drilling it down into what you're doing, your specific work, your specific programming, and how other people can get involved. Is that right?
That's right. I think I would come from it from a growing the kingdoms perspective as well, right? Like we are one of many organizations who might be tackling homelessness. So let's talk about homelessness on a broader spectrum, and then we can give people an understanding of their community's own issues here. So we are always looking for the opportunity to grow the kingdom. And this is one way to bring awareness to the issue that is larger and broader in some instances. This is one a lot of schools struggle with, is the need, because we want to go immediately to, well, public schools are failing. Well, tell me more. Why? Why are they failing? What is kind of that reason around it? And so that's that high level look at it and then drilling deep. We don't want to answer the solution here. We don't want to go too far into what are we doing to meet the needs. This is really just, we're laying it out there and we're going to have a conversation with that prospective donor about it. Well, the next one is mission, which is one of the easier sections, thankfully. So as we look into mission, we're going to look into this as, why do you exist? You've told me there's a need. Now I want to know why you. And so this is the opportunity for you to respond to why you are uniquely designed as an organization to meet the need. You can state your mission statement. Sometimes that's new to your donors. Maybe they don't know what your mission is, and this is an opportunity for you to restate it here. You can include your core values or even a brief history or a timeline of your organization to show them your growth over time, and maybe it's the longevity of your ministry. And then your appeal at the end, we're constantly thinking back to not having mission drift. So how does our appeal in the end relate back to this mission page and who we are? So you can see here, Joppa, rooted in love, our mission, their mission is to create communities of unconditional love, support, and hope for the homeless as we work together to prevent and ultimately end homelessness. And so they talked a little bit here about their core values, and then they included a timeline. It was really important for their community to see that they've been around since 2008. They have been facing this head on as the crisis has grown, and they've shown kind of their different ways that their program has grown, their staffing has grown, and ultimately they moved into a new location in 2020. So for them, they've really given this comprehensive look at their organization, which again, for some of your donors, they know this. But for those who are being introduced to your organization, this is an opportunity for them to see the history of your org. For Centered, you can see here that they have their core values are here that we decided to pull out in some icons and some visual representation. Again, this is a document that is very much a presentation tool. They had their mission on the cover, if you remember seeing that, raising up the next generation of leaders. And so they're leaning into who is a leader? What are the traits of a rooted and thriving leader? This is kind of their core values coming to life through this document. And you'll see throughout both of these cases, there are really quotes from individuals who have participated in the work, who support it, who partner with it. And that's just affirming the content that's on the pages there. It's really great to give reference point to that as we go through. So again, mission is not reinventing the wheel here. It's pulling from what you already have and giving people that comprehensive look of who you are and why are you uniquely created to meet this need. Jumping into lifetime value, this is one where we really want to look at, so what? Tell me more. Tell me why my giving to you has had an impact, and show me how it's had an impact. And so this is the long-term impact of your mission on individuals and communities. If you've been around for 40 years, what does it look like from somebody who was touched by your ministry 40 years ago? What does it look like for somebody who walked through your doors yesterday? So you're really giving that donor a perspective of those individuals who you're connecting with and meeting their needs of. It's assuring donors of the return of their investment. This is an opportunity where we want to bring new, fresh stories to light so that it's the first time that people have heard it. So we don't want to recycle things that have been on the website or transcribe videos that maybe you put out, but this is an opportunity for you to bring a fresh news story to share. Don't forget the human interest, the stories, the quotes, the testimonies that really will bring your mission to life. So for Joppa here, it was really important for them to show kind of the flow of Will's life. He came, you can see here, he ran into a volunteer and started to learn through her action more about Joppa. And then he went to get food, which was his first pressing need. And then Joppa put him up in a hotel room so that he could then move into permanent housing. And now he has an apartment and a job, and they continue to work through him through their aftercare and Circle of Friends programs. He's really rebuilding his life. But then you can see here his rent climbed. That's a real thing that's happening. And Joppa is once again stepping into Will's life, and he's actually living in their tiny home community. So this was a great way for them to show all of their programs that they have in a timeline format and give an overview of this individual's life. For Centered, we looked at what are the different programs that you have and kind of highlighted those different stories through here. So as I'm presenting a case for Centered, I probably would just pick one or two of these stories. These are short quotes so that I can then tell more about the story. Or I can say, this is what Ashley is doing today, and this is how she's still engaged in our ministry. So we want to think short, bite-sized opportunities for you to then expand upon and tell the story in greater detail. Any questions on lifetime value or the mission section? All right, we're going to look at program. Program is really the piece here where you are now going to unpack what you do. How do you do what you do? What are the program names that people are familiar with? What's the scope of those programs and activities? Who are you serving and how are you serving them? And so this is, you can kind of see the flow here, right? We've talked about the need. We've talked about who we are as an organization. We've told some stories to pique some interest and maybe show a little bit about our programming. But now we're going to get down to these are the things that we do in order to meet the needs through our daily work. So for Joppa here, you can see once again that theme has come through, the pillars of support. And these are three of the ways that they help through their programs. So they have their homeless services, again, short text, bulleted lists, so that as I'm presenting this, if I know that the individual I'm presenting to really maybe wants to learn a little bit more about the homeless nutrition program, I can then tell them more stories about that and how that comes to life through the program. Then you can see here we have their housing development, which is their cottage homes and their loft homes. We heard about that with Will's story. So maybe we're learning a little bit more. If someone says, tell me more about the cottage homes, we're able to dive in and understand their passion for that. And then we have education advocacy here, which is another project that they have through educating the public, which is a great initiative that they have and very robust through that. So these are different ways that they have kind of shown their work. Again, it's short text so that they can just tell the individual more about the program. This should all be things that you're able to pull from to craft these pages here. For Centered, they focused on this section here on their three of their groupings that they do. So Women's Fellows, their leadership cohorts, and the in community. And you can see they gave a little bit of a description, and then they leaned into, once again, telling some stories around that program, because Centered is mentorship and engagement with one another. And so for them, the metrics are a little harder than it would be for a program like JAPA, where it's tangible needs. And so we leaned into telling more of the stories and giving the narrative around the lives that have been impacted through each one of these programs. So in the program page, this could be 2 spreads, it could be a full 4 pages, just depending on how robust your activities are and your programs. You definitely want to focus and include programs that you're referencing later on in your budget. So if you're going to talk about it later, we want to make sure that it's represented well in the program section, so it's not a surprise to an individual when they say, wait, what's that? I'm not sure what that is, and why do you need funding around it? So it's a really good place to look at that comparison. Any questions around program? Okay.
Vangie,
Yes.
we have internal processors on this call today. So
Great.
they're taking it all in.
Love it.
And they're processing it, and then they're going to ask a bunch of questions at the end, probably. So
I will be ready.
This is great.
And Vangie, one other thing, I've just gotten a different comments of people really affirming that examples you're giving are very helpful to make the ideas come alive. So I do agree with what John said. There's a lot of processing, a lot of people overlaying it, and a lot of great information. So keep going.
We'll keep going. So accomplishments, we don't do this section well, and that's probably because we each are in it to grow the kingdom, to minister, to love on those that we serve. But this is an opportunity for you to brag about yourselves. This is an opportunity to show off. What have you done? What have you accomplished? Where are the highlights in your programs that have been recognized? So we want to describe the impact of the programs on those that you serve and the greater community at large, especially if you're a great partnering organization. This is an opportunity to call out that collaborative nature of your work. And then this is where, statistics come in handy, graphs, charts, those are helpful. If you don't have metrics, once again, it's a place where stories and testimonials can come to life through this. So here's JAPA's. As you can imagine, they've got some very tangible numbers that they can relate back to. So 45 homeless individuals helped off the street and into permanent housing, 8,600 outreach visits, 3,200 aftercare visits, and then their number of food, 118,000 pounds of food. Then they did this really great thing where they did a comparison to show growth. So in 2015, we were 17.5 hours per volunteer. Now in 2020, we're at 30.5 hours per volunteer. So really looking at this shows growth. This shows longevity. This should be encouraging to a donor to be able to see this. I've seen this done in bar graphs with growth over time. I've seen this done where it's a story of an individual who has walked through multiple layers of the program, and so they're able to show kind of the individual's experience and have them tell their story through a graphic or design. So this is a good place to combine this. Now, I will say program and accomplishments can become one section. If you feel like your programs need to have your accomplishments and your outcomes to kind of give it more of a robust feel and provide clarity, go ahead and combine the two. So it could be that the homeless, all 4 of these statistics would be just under that one first initiative we saw about the homeless services. That would be an opportunity to combine. So lean into that if you feel like, wow, these are really blending together. It's okay to make it one section. Then with centered, again, more programmatic gathering of people, less metrics. And so they leaned into some of their volunteer hours here. They saw 1,500 people encountered Jesus through one of their gatherings. They put in a dollar value because they knew some of their donors are thinking very strategically about the ROI on the dollar investment. And so you'll see that somewhat woven throughout their case here. They gave away scholarships to 200 people. And again, this is an opportunity where they combined their accomplishments and their programs. So this is the first time we're hearing about these different events that they hold, but it made sense for them to kind of merge together. So they had that first section where we heard more about those 3 individual programs, and then we're diving into their events that they have here. Once again, you can see the graphics, and we've got some quotes here from attendees of these events. Okay. Well, our next one is the beast, part of the case statement, which is the vision for the future. And I like to start with the vision and then come back alongside with the other material, because this is the one that takes the longest for digestion. And sometimes you need to step away and come back and step away and come back. So this is really answering the question, where is your organization headed over the long term? And if you have a strategic plan, that's clearly outlined in your strategic plan. But this is an opportunity to cast that long-term vision, relate it back to the vision, relating the vision back to the mission and your goals that you've already stated kind of earlier on. What are your programmatic goals? And then show how your fundraising is going to help this vision. So in thinking about an annual fund, you could use this case for 2 to 3 years, and maybe you're just updating your numbers in your budget and maybe bringing in a new story and refreshing some of your statistics. But people will have that understanding of this is their 2 to 3 year vision for what they plan to accomplish, and they're going to give me updates through the process. So it might be that next year when I see their case, I'm going to see the same framework, but I'm going to see where the accomplishments have happened in the last year. This could be including just, maybe a new staffing hiring, so operational costs, those kinds of pieces, but we want to always relate it back to that mission. So for JAPA, you can see here they have expanding foundations. Remember, thinking back to their theme and pulling it together. They are seeing an increase in these needs. And so they have identified these 3 things as kind of their needs for the year in addition to operations. So they're just highlighting their buckets, as I would call them. So the Homeless Resource Center, the Thrift Mart, and then the JAPA Village. You can see in each one of these, they've given the outcome. So the Homeless Resource Center is an innovative solution to provide efficient and comprehensive support, allowing us to expand our reach. A year from now, they're going to be able to say, this is what the Resource Center was able to accomplish. Remember, we said we were going to set out to expand our reach. This is the number of individuals who we met. Their Thrift Mart, providing sustainable income for JAPA operations while offering job training for homeless individuals. So once again, we're able to go back and say, what did we accomplish with the Thrift Mart throughout the year? And then JAPA Village, getting 50 people immediately off the streets. By providing them a source of income. For centered, they were looking at deepening their roots and strengthening their team. So they had some hiring that they needed to do. So an events and operations coordinator. They needed to improve some infrastructure. So an app, website overhaul, a migration to Office 365, which doesn't sound like that big of a deal. But when Alexis, their executive director, explains it, I'm like, yes, I am all in. I will give to that because you need it and it is hindering you from doing the work that you're called to do. So Don't shy away from the things that seem mundane to you, because there most likely is a donor out there that has an operations project management mind and understands that. And then you can see here, their associates, being able to spend 40 hours more per week investing in the lives of leaders tomorrow. And so through that, they really are looking at growing existing partnerships, forming new partnerships, and establishing deeper relationships with marketplace and civic leaders. So this is, again, kind of those buckets that they were working through as they built this out. Vision, like I said, sometimes it's hard. Sometimes there's competing interest in this. If you're in a capital campaign, sometimes it takes a couple months to land on the numbers and what are exactly are we able to do. And that's where a feasibility study is really helpful for capital campaigns. But for your annual fund, you want to look at what are the goals that we're looking to accomplish over the next 2 to 3 years, and what are those buckets of funding that we can show outcomes for when we get to next year and the year after. Financial needs. We're going to describe this in terms of programs. So we're going to look back at what we did with the program page, with our vision page, and we're going to address that in terms of those buckets. We want to make sure for those donors who are financially minded that our numbers are airtight, because they will ask the questions. And this is where it's very helpful to have a brief case material or a supplementary material of the budget in much greater detail, but we don't want to publish that in the case statement. That is for a very specific group of people who really want to dive into your finances a little bit more. We want to show sustainability. Is this by hiring an additional staff member? How do you plan to account for that in your annual fund in future years? Or if you're starting a new program, what does the startup costs look like based on the operation costs, based on then the maintenance costs? And so we want to include that here. And then again, be ready with the detailed supplemental information, but don't lead with it. I have some clients who have one-pagers for each of their programs because they felt constrained by the case. And they knew that if somebody wants to dive a little bit deeper into a program, they have a one-pager that they can bring out and talk through that as well. So be thinking, okay, what do we need to include that helps me tell the story, but also I want to be prepared with this additional information if needed. So as we look at JAPA here, you can see we've seen these buckets before: homeless services, housing development, and education advocacy. So I've seen those, I'm reminded of them. And then we have their administrative fundraising bucket, which makes sense, right? They have these operational costs that they need to include. But you can see here, it's not in great detail. It's giving me a number for each of these buckets. And then if I want to dive a little bit deeper into housing development, I can say, tell me where that 221,000 is actually going. And you're able to provide that information there. For centered, once again, you'll see this here. They have the deepening their roots, strengthening our trunk and branches, and bearing more fruit. So once again, we're going back to those buckets that were represented on that vision page with their goal here of 985,000. So we don't want the budget to be a surprise when we get there. I have seen some cases that will outline the cost with each of the initiatives. So again, this page is just a reminder because I've already seen the costs earlier in. So it just really depends on kind of what you feel like your donors might identify well with. If they don't want to get bogged in the numbers too soon, I would keep it just for this page. But if you know they're going to ask it early, you can include that in the vision section as well. Then probably the most important piece is the gift plan. How do you plan to fund this? How do you plan to get there? What are the number of individuals who will partner with you to come alongside you? And so this is what we would build based on what do we know about our donors and our prospects? What are they regularly giving each year? And do we believe that they could stretch a little bit? If so, I want to show them as an individual on the gift plan. So when I craft a gift plan, I look at who's giving, what are they giving at, what do I believe my target low is, which I'm 90% sure they'll give again. And then my target high, which is what am I confident in asking them to give. And then I have them represented on my gift plan as a line item so that I'm able to build it based on who I have and who those individuals are. I think we often forget, or we feel like maybe we don't have the donors that we need for this, and the gift plan allows for that, but we don't want to forget about those partners who have come alongside us faithfully for so many years. And so this is an opportunity to represent them. We're going to list the number of gifts that we need at each level to reach our goal. We have a top, middle, and lower tier so that when we're showing the gift plan people, if we're asking for a range, we could say, would you consider being in the top tier of this? Would you consider a gift in the middle to lower range? And it's just very helpful as I'm holding the case to even just circle the area where I anticipate they might give. It's good for those who are visual. I have some clients who actually slash through what gifts have already come through, again, to show them our lead gifts have come in. We're so grateful that people have partnered, especially for those donors who say, come back to me when you have other individuals giving. You can say, we've got it. And so that's helpful in that regard. And then people can see where their gifts fit into the larger goal. It's important for them to have an understanding that you have a pipeline of new givers coming in, and that you're not relying on one individual or one foundation to fund your strategy for the year. So this is an example of JAPA's gift plan. So you can see here the number of donors, their gift amounts totaling what that would be. We've got our three kind of distinct tiers that we're working in. And then their monthly donors, I'll call everyday angels. And they have a monthly giving programs. And so they've represented them here at those various levels, but they have a goal of 120,000 for that group for this year. So in looking at their annual fund, they've identified 116 donors who they believe would help them with this $1.5 million gift. Then we can look at Centered here. They call their donors partners. You know, we all have different names, right? Partners, gospel patrons, givers. So you want it to be what you would refer to as your people. Then we've got our different gift amounts here and our totals. I can tell you with Centered, again, this case statement for Centered took 9 months, which is one of the longest, and I don't anticipate it will take you for that long for yours. But they had to really come to terms with who they were and where they were headed in the future. And there were a lot of voices coming into this conversation. But walking away, they took this and presented this to their lead giver, who traditionally would help meet payroll every month. And he was blown away by the fact that Alexis could say, I know a person at each one of these lines that we have a strategy around to go and communicate with. And they are, for the first time ever, meeting their goal every year, and they have not had to go back to him for payroll. So this helps donors see your plan without having to give too much information around who those individuals are. But again, they can see that you've outlined what that looks like. So in thinking about just the last section of our case here, we have the leadership profile. We want to look at who are the board and committee members and key staff who are coming alongside this strategy. We want to include the organization's contact information. Somehow, some way, this might end up in someone else's hands and they might reach out. And so we want to make sure that's on there. And then this can be printed on the inside back cover or the back cover. This is a great opportunity if you have advisors who are well known in your community. If you haven't included them in testimonies or quotes throughout the document, this is a great place for them to also kind of put their name next to yours. So you can see here with JAPA, here's their leadership, their board of directors, and then their core staff. And this is their back cover. So their donor rep and then their location. And then this is Centered. So again, Centered is all about bringing people together collectively. So they had a lot of volunteer key groups that we needed to pull in and have them represented. And then we've got their board of directors here. So this is an opportunity for them to kind of highlight their reach, which is expansive in the King County area. So it's a good opportunity for them. And then if you remember from the cover, and hopefully you've seen throughout this, the tree did not have leaves or fruit or deep roots. And so once again, that seedling kind of grew throughout the document in an artistic way and then came to life on the back of the cover. So they really worked that theme through the document here. Let's see here. We have a question. Is this a brochure? It is not a brochure because we are only going to print 50 at a time, maybe. And that's because it is a living document. You might find that the flow is a little bit off and you need to adjust a transition, or you might find like, oh, like we just established these core values and we want to get them in, or, oh, this is an incredible story. Let's replace that story we have with this new fresh one. And so we say small batch printing, which unfortunately sometimes is more expensive, but in the long run, it'll save you. And then each year, you might use this for 2 to 3 years in your annual fund and just be refreshing it. And so that's a place where you can pull new budget numbers and you can highlight some of your accomplishments that you've accomplished in the last year. But it is definitely a material that you will take with you where you go to meet with major donors one-on-one. You might use a Flip Snack, which is an online tool that will turn it into a book. And so you're able to present via Zoom. But when you think about your major donors, and for instance, we could look at Centered's here, you know, they're looking at probably these top tiers, tier 1, tier 2, and then a little bit of tier 3. So maybe they're only going to present this over the course of the year to 100 individuals. But when you have this case developed, you're able to pull pieces into your communications. So this is just kind of guiding your communications for the year, and it's bringing some synergy to those conversations that are happening. Did that answer the question about brochure internal? Okay, yeah, great. So as we look at kind of what are the next steps, or what are our tangible things we can do, the first piece would be to develop your content by following the 10 elements. Jonathan and Heather will send out these 10 elements that give you a little bit more information, but then also this presentation, and just start in a Word document. Start with theme, start with need, kind of give your buckets. I have one organization that did sticky notes on a wall that was massive, and they just had people start with that way, and then they had someone pull the content together. Identify what are the gaps. It might be that you need to spend some time looking for research on your statistics that are helpful to bring the need that you're meeting to life. And so don't get bogged down with that, try to get through the rest of it and then come back to that piece there. Then you want to take it into design. So the case for support I was used to was not an undesigned 1 to 2 pager. And as a visual person, I struggled with that. I was like, I don't know, I don't see it come to life. And so design is a good piece here. When you're working with your designer, it's important for them to understand this is not a marketing tool. I need to be able to hold it across the table from someone, and I need to see things that jump out. And then I can elaborate on that. So I always say I like to present them like I'm reading a book at a library to a group of kids, right? I'm just going to show it. And the reason is I don't want to give the donor a copy and have them completely lost in the document while I'm 3 pages back. And so this is an opportunity for you to present it and show it. I have seen some cases done on an iPad, like in Canva, and you're just kind of flipping through. I just would recommend that you have a tangible piece that the individual can hold afterwards as a leave behind as well. We want to practice presenting. So especially if you're presenting with another individual, it's good to figure out who's going to do the needs section? Who's going to talk through the transition into the vision? Who's going to ultimately walk through the funding? And so it's good to sit down with it and write down your talking points and then debrief afterwards. What worked? What transition statements landed well? What were the questions that donors asked that maybe we can address in our presentation so that we can learn more about their passions as opposed to diving into clarity? So that's a good opportunity to do that. Printing in small batches, we talked about why, but I have one client that's on, I think they did 54 iterations in a campaign. And again, they were making progress in their campaign, but they just had a point where a president kept getting stuck. And so he wanted to modify the flow of it just a little bit. And I think the most important piece here is we are always going to ask permission. And that just helps us build a relationship that is true and authentic. We want to get to know our donors on a level of just that's more than just seeing them for a gift. And so the case really gives you that opportunity in the asking process to get to the point where you say, you know what, we've pulled together the case for support for this year, or our case statement. We'd love to walk you through the vision for the future, and I'd love to show you how we plan to get there. I like to do case presentation and the ask in 2 separate meetings, if it makes sense for the donor, because it gives them time to dive into the material. And then I'm asking once again, is it okay if I come and talk to you in a week after you've had a chance to review this about your gift for the year? Then they're able to look at that gift plan. They're able to really think through their questions. And when I first show up for that ask meeting, I'm going to reaffirm today, we're going to talk about your gift, but I'm also going to say, what questions did you have after I left? What left you wondering? What pieces of information can I help fill in the gaps for? So I would say that's the most important piece when using a tool like this. I'll jump back to design because I'm a design person, but it can be different sizes. If something's unique to you or unique to you, your ministry, we don't want this to look unfamiliar, but we want it to look polished and like a different material than what they would see in their regular mail that they're receiving. So just be thinking about, what does that look like when it comes to us as an organization? And then my contact info is here. If you have questions, I love to unpack cases. They're super fun. I've seen them utilized really well. And like I said, was centered until they had this piece. They really weren't making asks. Their people were afraid. They weren't equipped. They didn't know what they were asking for. And this gave them a tool. And now their donors are in the rhythm of knowing, okay, February's coming around. They figured out I'm a first quarter giver. They're going to ask permission and present the case. They're not left wondering as to when you call, oh, are they going to ask me for money? No, like they're in that rhythm of knowing that a case presentation with the vision for the future is coming. We can open it for questions, and I'm happy to bounce back and forth in the deck if that's helpful too, if people would like to see more examples.
Yeah, this is so great, Vangie. Thank you so much. I have a couple questions, if that's okay.
Yeah.
So let's say we've got some organizations. Let's say we're an organization, pretty small, right? Still growing and launching, small budget, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
What do you recommend from that standpoint? And in my mind, right, is there a simpler version of this that you would recommend? Or, and here's my other big question, would you say this is so important that you should prioritize it, right? And get it figured out and spend the money on it because it's going to help you for 2 and 3 years moving forward. So what would your direction be for a smaller org with maybe a limited budget?
Yeah, definitely. It is important, I would say, to have this tool because it gives you the freedom to then know and be equipped to go make these asks. And sometimes there's so many things thrown at us and we get distracted, but I know in the process, I need to present the case to this donor. They're ready for it. They're going to see it as a helpful tool for them understanding their giving, but it's more helpful for me as a development director to walk in equipped. So I have seen cases that are 4 pages. They made a first round stab at it and it was great and it was a tool. And then from there, they identified the pieces that helped them to grow that into a much longer document. But again, 8 to 12 pages, like that's, and we're talking designed pages, right? We're not talking full content. We're thinking through what does it look like to really show kind of the charts and the graphs and the pictures that help me then bounce off the page and give a little bit more content. So don't be bogged down by content. I actually, when you start to put things in writing and then you get to design, you start to cut. I mean, things just come out and it's like, wow, that paragraph should be a bulleted list because I don't know what to highlight in that. Or, wow, we need to, in this paragraph, bold these terms and these phrases so that as I'm presenting, that's what's popping out to me as reminders of what content to share. So I would say this tool will change your life as far as feeling equipped, but then being respectful of your donor's time because you have a built-in agenda and a built-in plan.
Awesome. Thank you.
And I will say too, I've seen some incredible cases in Canva. Like if you're familiar with Canva, it is a very helpful tool, but you don't have to have design skills. There are great layouts that help you do a plug and play in Canva. I've seen some in PowerPoint that are then printed as well. So don't feel like you have to go rush out to pay a designer. There are people and volunteers. This is a great opportunity to lean into them as well.
Well, we do have a few questions here that are piling up. People are excited. So Katie, go ahead and jump in.
Yeah, my question is kind of on your last statement about the design, because you said, and this really fits my organization, that you're going to need to tweak it as it goes and you learn. My challenge we've ran into is just that our better looking stuff is designed by a real designer.
Sure.
But then my staff can't easily tweak that or update that, right? And so I was just curious what your tools or techniques were, because Canva for us just doesn't look the same as the stuff that our professional designer does, but it limits us in the ability to make changes, even simple changes.
Sure. Adobe Pro has made some huge strides in this. So if your designer can build it in the fonts that are on Adobe Pro so that it's an easy, so even if you're changing a number or two, you can do the switch out for that. I have a lot of clients that work in that. The other thing is, you have to determine what is a version change and what just is us needing to shift our language, and maybe we can stack up several version changes and still get by with what we have. But I would lean into asking your designer, is there a way that you can provide us an editable format for those simple changes? Even in Adobe Pro, you can swap out photos even. I mean, it's come a long way with what you can do to modify documents. So for instance, we have a designer on our team. He'll send me things. If I see one change, I'm going to do it in Adobe as opposed to going back to him.
Thank you.
Yes. We have one about the importance of presenting the 3 tiers. So when we're making an ask, 80% of the time we're going to ask for a range, unless a donor has really said, like, my number is 100,000 this year, or my number is 25,000. And so that's where that range is helpful to show kind of where you're at. Let me pull a big one here. And so in looking at this gift plan, as I'm holding it and presenting it, I can see my 3 tiers are divided up there and I can see my total here. And so going into that, I might be walking into this meeting and I know this is my lead giver. And so I'm going to say, would you please make a sacrificial gift as our lead giver? And they can see, well, there's one donor at the top and I know that that's who it is. Or it might be, we would love for you to come alongside us and join us in this upper tier as one of our lead givers. And so you're giving people context as to why these are divided, but it helps to narrow your ask. You're going in with an understanding of what your target low is, 90% sure what they're going to give, and their target high, what am I willing? And so as I build my gift plan, I might say, well, I know this donor typically gives 25,000. I feel like maybe they're going to stretch to 30 this year. I want to make sure that I have 30 represented as a line so that when I refer to those two lines, they see themselves as a stretch gift. So it's important to kind of build that out that way. Daniel, is that helpful? Great. Okay, awesome.
I had a question.
Yes.
So we're like, Jonathan brought up like the small, like getting started. We're in a weird spot with all of this because RIFO, my organization, was a nonprofit before and is now joined, like we have been for several years, been under a missions organization. And so we haven't been operating as a nonprofit. Sure. And so like there's two kind of components to that. One is we haven't been doing that fundraising overall. We have some monthly support. The other side is that like I raise my own personal support as a missionary through this organization.
You're deputy, sure.
How have you done that where it like it talks about both of those, because we'd like it to benefit.
Yes.
Like we have 2 full-time staff members, and then we also we don't have an operational budget at all or anything like that. We haven't needed to have one until now.
Okay.
Generally, it's not been something we've needed. So like, how would you put that together?
Well, it's funny, the big organizations are dealing with this right now, right? When they're deputized and they have missionary, InterVarsity, and the Navigators, Jesus Film, like all of these orgs who have people that are out raising their own support, but ultimately trying to get people to capture the vision of the larger mission at hand. So a couple ways you could do that. You can have each individual have their own case, with the giving page being different. So the budget and the giving page speaks to that individual's needs if there's not operational costs. But everything else is consistent across the board. So everyone is presenting the same case. It just might be that, you know, that individual has been able to speak to my needs for the year are this amount. The other way to do it is to have an insert. And so you would have an organizational case statement, but then you might have an insert that highlights that individual's specific needs for the year as well, so that they're able to drill in. But ultimately, our hope would be, and this is a shift happening in deputized organizations, is that they would give to the individual and they would give to the larger organization, because their individual giving will increase when they see how they're part of the bigger picture and they're shown impact from across the board. So ultimately getting to a 2-part ask, or, you know, not being in a deputized organization, which I know is not easy for everyone, but then it's a one comprehensive ask that you're then able to allocate. So Centered did that. Centered, they're deputized. This was the first time they put in writing, this is the organization's needs, and they sent everyone out to raise that. And then based on what you raised, they kind of re-looked at, okay, this is your amount allocated, and then this amount goes to the org. Some do it through a percentage raised, so an admin fee as well. So you're going out and raising on behalf of the organization or on behalf of yourself, but then that admin fee is pulled to cover operations, which, because of your size, that might be the right way to approach that. Is that helpful?
Yes, it was.
And I think I would just recommend, if your team is small and you're going to have multiple people out presenting on behalf of themselves, including them in the case development process is huge. They need to have buy-in into a document that they're sharing and presenting.
Great. Katie, did you have another question?
You are magical with your words. And I am just curious if you have like a cheat sheet for us that you can share of just the right language. Like you even said a sacrificial gift, and I wrote it down as fast as I could, just to articulate these things, not only in conversation, but in writing them. And I understood how you said, like, you come up with these themes, and I loved it. but there are sometimes just core things that
Yeah.
you at minimum want to say it this way until you can jazz it up in your own
Right.
language. Do you have anything
Right.
to share like that?
Yes, I definitely can come up with it. So maybe Heather, Jonathan, and I can mold our minds together and come up with that. But I think making the ask, there are some very key language pieces that help you get to the ask. And so it's building out that sacrificial or would you consider being a lead gift in this?
Yes, you're so
Yeah.
good at this.
Sure.
Write a
sure.
book. Yeah, thank you.
Well,
I would buy it.
Well, I wish. So I served as a missionary overseas. And man, I wish I knew a lot of this back then, because raising money as an individual with a larger organization. So I was in a deputized organization, but was responsible. I stumbled a lot. And so it's a couple years of experience. But thank you for that. Yeah.
Thank you.
We'll work on that. We'll get that to you.
So good. Any other questions? Feel free to fire away here. Anybody? All right. Well, Vangie, this was so awesome. Thank you so much for just bringing your expertise to the table. A couple things, all the points that Vangie covered today. Again, we're going to send the PowerPoint, but then Vangie's also going to share another resource that just summarizes all of this. So we'll send that to you as well. And then Vangie, I guess I was wondering, some of the case statements that you just worked through as examples, is there one of those that you might be able to pass on as an electronic version that we might be able to share as well? Is that a possibility?
Yeah, I can send you the Joppa one in full.
Great.
I just asked, keep it close. They're not using that one right now, but but I can certainly send that your way.
Okay, so yeah, so that'll be great, but just use it for obviously.
Then you can see the flow of how they've kind of build upon each page, leaning into it for sure.
Yeah, so just keep that internal when you receive that, and just use it for gaining some additional direction yourselves. So, this has just been so great. So much material that's so applicable on so many different levels.
I could have talked for hours. So, I mean, luckily they limited me, because case statements are my jam. So
yeah. Okay, and that leads me to my last question before we pray and let you go. Vangie, specifically, can people follow up with you with some additional questions? And let's say somebody says, you know what, we really want to dive in on this and put resources to it and gain some coaching and direction from the focus group. Is all that a possibility? And what's the best way to do that?
Yeah, definitely. I would love, just those quick questions as you're thinking through. I'm happy to dive in and maybe even send you some other examples if you're in a unique ministry situation that we maybe didn't represent today in our samples. But yes, at the focus group, we have this bucket called Targeted Advancement Council. And so we might have a 2-month agreement where we help you develop a case, and we have an in-house designer as well. That's all he does is case statements. So definitely, if that's something that you're looking at, reach out. I'm happy to talk through what our offerings are and how we can be of help.
Awesome.
That's great.
Thank you. Yes, Heather, go ahead. Yeah.
One comment about that is I think you really did touch for a number of folks that feel a little bit more like centered, that they've really wrestled to get some of those things. So really helpful to see the 2 different examples that way. And I know it's just stirred people that, they haven't been able to find that piece and go, it's nice to know somebody wrestled and they really got there. Very helpful to see that as well. So that combination was just ideal. Thank you.
Good. Yeah. And that's part of what we do is we do a 4-hour case day, and we're just throwing stuff at the wall, and you walk away with your first content draft. And for Centered, that was multiple case days. Like there was tension. Like we had to work through, like, what do we do? And who are all the voices that need to speak into this? But for their organization, I think they would attribute a lot to why they're still here and working in what they're doing, because they were able to go through this process. So not only did it benefit with a product, but it benefited a clarity around their role.
Yeah, great. Thank you so much. Heather, can I ask you to pray for this group of
Mhm.
leaders, and then we'll send you on your way.
Yeah. Lord, we thank you for the work that Vangie's done, the work that Focus Group has done, and what they've shared with us graciously, generously today. Lord, thank you for the way that you use that, in individual lives, just that this is exactly what was needed today. There was encouragement, it was affirmation to different things. So we look to you and we do say, we do want to have clarity. We want to be equipped. We want to be empowered to be able to go before people and share with confidence and joy what you've called us to, and with words that make sense to other people. Lord, you know that in our calling, at times we just know so much, or we're thinking about this so deeply that words don't always come out. So we ask you to help us even to take this and to take those next steps, just to take one or two that would move us in the direction that would bring greater freedom, greater clarity, and would enable us to present before people in a way that makes clear the vision that you've given to us, so that we can see your kingdom come on earth as it is in heaven. We give you thanks for today. Thank you for your kindness and your mercies, and bless Vangie, bless Focus Group as they do their work, and bless each ministry and each leader represented here today. We just lift this to you and thank you for today. In Jesus' name, amen.